Hello and welcome. My name is Eileen Sanchez from Pros in the Pandemic, and this is
Valerie Taylor, also from Pros in the Pandemic.
Hi,
What a
Valerie.
pair we are.
Oh, for sure. And Valerie is the author of What's Not Said, and I have my copy here. Where's
And
your
I have
copy?
mine.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
And Valerie is an author and a book reviewer, and that's just for starters. So I'd like you to check her out at ValerieTaylorAuthor.com. And we'll give you that website again later. But now, Valerie, I'm so glad to talk with you. I know we talk a lot, but it's good to talk about your book because it's gotten so many good reviews. It's just like blowing up
exploding
there. It's
across
great.
the whole cybersphere. It is very exciting, and I'm really privileged to be here talking with you today. Eileen, thank you so much for having me. Can I tell you a little bit about my story?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, I need, my favorite question is like, what's the seed? Why did you write this? What happened? Like, tell us how it started or whatever you want.
Well, so you use the word seed and I use kind of the word nugget, I think. I, worked in corporate America for like 40 years and was doing all kinds of corporate communications. And I only read maybe 12 books a year. But when I retired and I started reading maybe 40 books a year, I found that I kept saying, I could write this, I could write this. And I had been carrying around a nugget of an idea for about 10 years about a story that I knew the ending of, but I can't tell you that because it's a major twist in the story. But I would be reading different novels, and I discovered in some research that there are 75 million mature women in the United States who are looking for books about characters they can relate to. And the more I researched it, I realized that when you think of the chick lit generation back in the 1990s, with Bridget Jones's Diary. Well, all of us are now not 35 anymore.
No?
So so we are mature, but we're still looking for characters that we can relate to. And so that's why I created Cassie O'Callaghan, who is a middle-aged woman who has been in an emotionally abusive marriage for 30 years. And she had met a young man when she was on a vacation in Venice and has decided to finally leave her husband and move in with her young lover when she discovers that her husband has a life-threatening illness, chronic kidney disease. And so all of her plans kind of are derailed until she discovers that her husband has other secrets that he's been holding from her.
Oh, so that's where the title came from.
Yes.
What's not said.
So she has to decide if she's going to save her husband or if she's going to save herself. And that's the story.
Well, that's the nugget.
The nugget.
The nugget of the story, because there's so much more to it. And you know what? I know that I wanted to ask you about you really are writing a series now.
I am.
You'll be talking a little bit more about that book too. When you wrote What's Not Said, did you know that it was going to be a series?
No, I didn't. I had this desire to write one great American novel. And that's what I wrote. I wrote it as a standalone. And then I gave it to some readers to give me some feedback, and to a person, they came back and said, so what's next? We want to know what's next. And so that gave me the motivation to see if there was enough of a story going forward to create a series. And I discovered that there very much is. And so I written the sequel. It's called What's Not True, and it will be published August 24th, 2021. So as of this date, it's just under 6 months from now.
So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to make sure that we talk about characters in your book. And well, I kind of gave away my preference, I suppose, but what takes center stage in your stories? Plot, setting, or is it characters?
So that, in retrospect, I've had to think about that. And certainly it's a plot that has a lot of twists and turns in it, but it's really character driven. And the characters actually drove me as I was writing it. So as I said, I knew what the ending was going to be, but they had to get me there. And they did.
Well, you know, our readers are so important to us, and we really look forward to what readers think. Some readers, or really they're reviewers. And I just saw a review that made me laugh because it was just, I think she said what I was thinking, and I told you I said whatever I said in a very different way after your book, but I want to read what this reviewer said and then get your reaction to it.
Okay.
So seems like she's Southern, because she says, y'all, this book is the best. Mike and Cassie are a complete train wreck, and it's a glorious thing to read. I became so invested in these characters and their twisted sense of right and wrong that while I was reading the book, I actually tried to give them advice out loud on my porch. So she recommends take an evening off, turn off your Netflix drama, and read this book instead. And it just made me laugh because when I met Cassie and Mike, I kind of felt like that too. And they're just such real people. So you created these characters to tell the story, and tell us about how did you do that?
Well, I think that in some respects, there are elements of my life and relationships in the story, although it is not a memoir. But I did create characters that are flawed, and I've gotten that feedback as well. And some people like that, and other people don't. They want to read happy characters, I guess. But aren't we all flawed in some way? And so Cassie has her good points and her not so good points, and so does Mike. And together, it's amazing that they stayed together as long as they did, but they did. And I don't think I would have written it any other way. I recently just finished a little course on how to develop an antagonist, and that would be Mike in my story. And I think that there are things that I could have done to help him be more of a redeemable character, but I like him just the way he is. Well,
and you know what? I think that you said this somewhere, or I know I read it, that what another reviewer liked, maybe it was the same reviewer, was that when the divorce, the character said, I'm divorcing you, I'm not deserting you.
Right.
So that proves to me that there was it can work out that way, that you care for this person, you're not dumping.
That's right.
And
right.
So that, I think that you did do it. You did.
Yeah.
He must
Thank
have
you.
been redeemable in some way because
Some way.
the
Yeah.
character did say that.
Well, there's always the
Um,
sequel, of course.
oh, well, that's right. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is the writing process between the first and the second? Was it the same, or did you change your style or way?
Well, the first one, as I said, I knew the ending. The second, I knew the middle, and so I had to get my characters to the middle, which I did, and then I I devised the end. I mean, the characters brought me to an end that I didn't know that I was going to get to at the beginning. Um, the process was faster because it's set in Boston, both of them. The first one has a Venice scene, and there's more of Paris in the second. And so I had to do, some different research for both of them. But I think the other thing that's different is that um, Mike is the antagonist in the first book, and I have a different antagonist in the second book. And so that is, a big thing. But I think my style pretty much is the same in both.
Okay. I want to make sure we get a couple more questions in before we have to
Okay.
stop. So I wanted to talk about the lists in the back of the book. So could you tell us about them?
Oh, yes, there's two. One is a playlist that I devised on Spotify. I was inspired, Eileen, by a playlist that you did for freedom lessons. So
Thank you.
I was like, ooh, I can do that, and I can get it in my book rather than having to publish it after, which is a wonderful thing with She Writes Press. We can do those things. We have the creative input to do something like that. And so there is music titles throughout the book. And so even a reviewer, you mentioned a reviewer, one said recently that you should play the Spotify list while you're reading the book, because it kind of gives you some added enjoyment, I would hope. And then the second is a book club discussion guide. I'm been in book clubs for years now, and I think that it helps people who are in book clubs to have those questions available, although I find that they're just starting points. People don't always just follow them to the letter. And I've set a goal for myself that I want to do 21 book clubs in by the end of 2021.
Okay.
And I'm almost halfway there.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
So our readers are the ultimate critic. Have you learned anything from your readers that you didn't expect?
I have, and I think we learn every day when we either do book club discussions or we're reading their reviews on Goodreads and Amazon. One actually sent me an email thanking me for touching her soul.
Wow.
And I almost cried because those were like 3 words that I never thought I'd hear anyone say, but it really is kind of, when you say what was the seed and why did I write this, and I think I wrote it to touch people's soul, and so that was very rewarding for me. And another is that I was contacted by a woman in the United Kingdom who read the book, and she has a book club that is formed by women who have not been able to conceive. And so, without saying too much, Mike and Cassie do not have any children. And so there is that theme within the book. And so I'm going to be meeting with her club in the spring. So, I mean, you never know what you're going to hear from your readers.
Well, it really proves the point of how we can connect with readers, and that is why we write, isn't it? It's to really talk, to find common ground and to make friends, and sometimes our books are our friends. So we're just about out of time, but before we go, do you have a copy of What's Next?
Oh, I do, but I'm not ready to reveal it yet.
Okay. Well, that's not the title of it, but this is the What's Not Said.
What's Not Said.
What's Not Said. And what's the title of the new one?
What's Not True.
What's Not True.
What's Not True.
I thank you for your time today, and I wish you the best of everything. Good luck with your next book, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Eileen. You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.